So, as some of you viewers no doubt know by now, I got access to RunwayML's Gen 2 text-to-video generator. I want to preface this generator is still in its early alpha stages. It is not even complete yet, but I was very lucky. A Runway employee gave me access, and I've been doing a lot of testing, and I'm here today to show that to you guys. I also made sure not to leave the community out of this. I took some community suggested prompts, so we will see those as well. I also tried a pretty interesting method. I took Midjourney generations and their prompts and also put them through. You can think of this like image and prompt to video using Midjourney generations. These are the baby stages of text to video, and honestly, I think that this stuff is already close to what Stable Diffusion was when it originally released. I think that we can expect this to make great leaps and bounds this year. I think by the end of 2023, we're going to be seeing some pretty decent little text-to-video generations. So viewers, here is the first clip that I generated with RunwayML's Gen 2. Keep in mind, all of the clips you see are going to be repeating in this video because they're only about 3 seconds long, but we can expect this time to increase as Gen 2 gets better. Now, the prompt for this was cinematic, pen writing on paper, close-up, written words turning to fire. So we don't have that pen writing on the paper as you would expect from that description, and we kind of just have words on paper on fire. So you can see Gen 2's ability to actually understand the text that you're typing in is fairly limited as of now. But just as we saw with Midjourney's expansion in a year, Stable Diffusion's expansion in a year, this is all going to get much, much better very quickly. You can see the fire slowly spread across it, so it's cool to see that this fire does spread, and that's like a logical thing. We can see there's some bokeh blur in the background, and it is a very close-up image, so it got a decent amount of the prompt correct, but there is still a lot of training that Gen 2 has to do to be able to understand all of the cinematic cues and the action cues that we're going to put in these prompts. I just had to generate my famous lemon prompt, and it worked out decent, I think, all things considered. Of course, the classic lemon prompt is 3D animated anthropomorphic lemon character relaxing on the beach drinking lemonade, Pixar and Disney, and it definitely looks like an animated character for sure. It has those stylistic cues that would make you think of an animated character. I love the lighting in this image. The backlighting actually is fairly accurate when we look at this generated 3-second clip. But yeah, I mean, his head is moving in all sorts of ways. His arm is pretty creepy. The beach looks pretty cool, and I like the water moving in the background and everything, but yeah, in general, there is quite a bit of nightmare fuel in this clip. Definitely recognizable as a 3D animated character. I think that's the most important aspect of this, because a lot of 3D animation in the future is actually not going to be 3D at all, but AI generated. Alright, now this one was just straight nightmare fuel. This was actually a user submitted one. Simply a video of a dog breakdancing in the park, and it's trying to add the breakdancing effect of a human maybe breakdancing to a dog's skin and body, and it's just stretching and morphing. I mean, this is straight nightmares. I'll be honest, guys. This is not something that I would ever be happy to see when I'm at the park, and to be honest, I would probably run away in fear. It's just, you could see the legs morphing, you can see it's trying its best, but I mean, there is no real dog there. It's not really breakdancing. Definitely at the park, though, at least it got that part right, but yeah, overall, terrifying. Here's our first generation that's actually quite decent. This is a close-up of a Viking king with a beard emerging from a wet black mud with a cloudy sky, other Vikings fighting behind him. The background should be blurred and the video should be highly realistic. Definitely highly realistic. We got the blurred background. I don't see any Vikings fighting in the background, but we can't really complain about that, alright? This technology is very new. Got the beard. He is covered in mud, which is pretty cool to see. And he does seem like he is kind of emerging, and he sort of opens his mouth as like an exhale. And I love the snow in this one too. It looks like a very, very realistic scene. This is a realistic generation for sure, and it looks like a movie scene. Honestly, the anatomy of the face isn't too bad, all things considered as well. Obviously, this is nowhere near regular image generation technology, but for video clips, not too bad. I was very, very impressed when I first saw this one. So the prompt for this one was just simply arachnophobia, which of course is the fear of spiders. And you can see it actually kind of captures what that fear looks like almost in an eerie way. Spidery parts, there's like a spider head kind of looking, and we see like some spider arms in there. It's definitely kind of still a cinematic shot. Since it's a spider, it must be a small object, and you can see the background is blurred quite a lot, which kind of makes sense in that context. And then we've got like this gross spidery body moving upwards. So yeah, this is just some Eldritchian horror. This is another fairly realistic one and a pretty impressive generation. This is a man kneeling in the rain. He is looking down, which he's not in the video. The scene is stoic, neon light bouncing off the wet surfaces. So I think that Gen 2 really focused on that neon light pretty well. We see a lot of this neon light in the image. We see a lot of rain. And we definitely see this man sort of staring off into the distance. He's not kneeling. It really does look like he's just sort of standing up looking at something. So it needs to work on that. Images, it's a lot easier to kind of impress yourself with, and if it doesn't get the whole text into the final image, it's not as huge of a deal. With video, text is extremely important. We want to see all of the actions in there because we're looking to recreate a very, very specific scene. So the rain also gets a little bit weird towards the top of his head over here, so I'm not sure what's up with that, and the rain just kind of looks strange in general. In the middle, though, it's really not too bad. Lots of progress still to be made, but this is a decent generation for Gen 2. Honestly, this one was pretty impressive. This is a Mad Max style car thundering through the desert, leaving a cloud of dust behind it. And yeah, you can see it's definitely like a Mad Max style car. We see a huge dust cloud. He's in a desert area that you would imagine the movie Mad Max to be in. And the weird thing is the car just kind of explodes at the end of it. So that's weird. I'm not sure if that's just it's trying to make dust. Either way, the car does kind of look like it's slowly sliding backwards, but overall, I was very impressed with how much of the prompt it was able to capture. Lots of dust clouds in there. We got the whole Mad Max car. It's pretty cool. And this was super interesting. If you guys notice here, there's some black bars on this, so it's actually trying to make it literally like a different aspect ratio as if it were a movie. And it honestly did a pretty good job creating those black bar lines. So that's something to keep in mind, that this model is trying to add in movie scene lines. I think it's definitely been trained on movies. It's just really awesome, though, that we finally get a taste of text to video. It's going to emerge, and by the end of this year, text to video, I think, is going to be pretty normal. This one was pretty disappointing, honestly. Doesn't really match the prompt well at all. It was simply Gollum eating at a rock buffet. The context for this prompt isn't really that great, so you need a pretty smart model to be able to decipher that. It kind of just gave us like a rocky Gollum image here, and there's not really much movement going on at all. Notice how still the background is, though. That is pretty impressive. These text-to-video models are going to struggle to be consistent as they generate new frames, so we got to give it some major credit for this over here. I mean, that is a rock solid background and overall a pretty rock solid image. But yeah, maybe a rewording of this prompt would allow it to kind of get that funny image of like rocks being eaten by a golem. This one was pretty cool. This is inflatable waving tuba man walking across the street. I wish we could see his legs walking, but it's a pretty funny image of just like a slow zoom out of an inflatable man, definitely on the street. I mean, he looks like he's kind of hobbling around and walking maybe, but I mean, it definitely understands what that inflatable arm tube guy is supposed to look like and how he's supposed to walk around. You will notice, though, his face is changing quite a bit, which is definitely a problem. We got to have consistent faces when we're generating video, and that is not something that we see in this generation. By the way, guys, a lot of these are user submitted. This was Morgan Freeman wearing a puffer jacket and riding a bike. And you can see it definitely resembles Morgan Freeman. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you cloned Morgan Freeman like 100 times and then you ended up with like this weird cloned Morgan Freeman, but it looks a lot like him, honestly, and he's definitely zooming off somewhere. The background is very, very blurred, and his hands are totally screwed up over on the side here. I'm not sure what this is supposed to be, but he's got the puffer jacket as well. I love that he's wearing a helmet, even though it wasn't even specified in the prompt. So that is some context there that this AI is making. This is creative decision making that it's taking upon itself. So, you know, oh, if he's riding a bike, he must be wearing a helmet. And there you go. You get that in the final generation. This one is pretty impressive. It looks a lot like Morgan Freeman. This one was kind of a flop. Fox in a field full of wildflowers eating flowers. I mean, you can kind of make out that there's foxes in the imagery. The flowers honestly look fairly decent, I think, but yeah, you can't really tell that the fox is really eating flowers. Definitely wildflowers, though, I'll give it that. So this was my first prompt where I actually used Midjourney and an actual image that was generated by Midjourney as the input image with the Midjourney prompt. So yeah, this is essentially image to video. So the prompt was wearing a VR virtual reality headset, face, map marker software in the style of colorful futurism, 8K 3D, soft focus lens, and then a bunch of other stuff like stock photo, YouTube thumbnail. So there is the actual image itself. And you can see it's kind of somewhat resembles that original Midjourney image. You can see the guy is wearing like this weird futuristic VR headset. And I love the background though. I love like the different orbs or whatever they are moving around slowly. And we've got some sort of object here floating around, but it's a pretty cool moving background, I think. And it's a appealing image to look at, or an appealing little video to look at. So we've got some more lemon characters over here. They're kind of moving their heads synchronously as if they're like bobbing and dancing to music or something like that. But this was simply a cute cartoon lemon character wearing sunglasses, is relaxing on the beach with his arms behind his head and sunglasses perched atop his head. As you can see, I mean, this guy got half a sunglass here, and I guess these sunglasses are perched atop of his head. Definitely got his arms up behind his head. So it's really trying to make it there with all the different aspects of the prompt. All things considered, this generation's pretty messed up, but the lemon character has always been challenging to these AI art generators. So this requires a little bit of context. This generation is obviously a huge flop, and a user submitted this and said that this description kind of makes no sense, so he was kind of interested in seeing what the actual output would be. Anyways, this was colorless green ideas sleep furiously, so it's kind of just some random words. It's a sentence that is grammatically correct but makes no sense, and you can see our images are definitely green, but yeah, I mean, I guess those are just green ideas that are doing something. It's very, very random, and it doesn't make sense. So if you do a complete nonsensical prompt, you get nonsensical imagery. This one was really, really impressive, and there is something very specific about this image that I'm not sure if you guys are picking up on yet, but I will talk to you about soon because it's really, really important. First-person view GoPro footage of a mountain biker speeding down a trail. Obviously, fairly accurate generation here. I mean, the hands are pretty screwed up, all things considered. It's definitely like wide-angle view GoPro footage, and you can see, I'm not sure, there's like a bike tire here and like maybe a foot, but this part of the bike looks pretty good, other than the fact that the bike is like moving a little bit. But we can actually see in the background of the image here, when we're looking at the rest of the trees and the nature and the mountain bike trail, which looks fairly good. You can actually see there's a little bit of jiggle in the movement, like jello kind of moving about, let's say. The top half of this video actually gets updated before the bottom half, and obviously this isn't, Gen 2 messing up. It's actually because Gen 2, which has been trained assumedly on some GoPro footage, has picked up on the fact that GoPro has something called rolling shutter, and this is something that if you're into videography, you're going to know about, or even photography. As a camera takes an image, and that's what video is just a bunch of series of images, the top pixels of that image are scanned first, and then a little bit of time passes, and the next pixel is scanned, and the next line of pixels. So essentially you end up with an image where it's like a split second sooner at the top than it is at the bottom, and you can clearly see it in a lot of video footage, especially these smaller little webcams or cameras such as a GoPro, and it's very, very visible in this demonstration. Gen 2 has actually learned that that is something that happens with GoPro footage and has added it in there. It's also added quite a lot of motion blur as the biker bounces up and down the mountain road as well, so that's something else to point out. It's picking up on nuances of camera effects, so you are going to be able to expect to add certain qualities to your prompts with more advanced versions of Gen 2, let's say in the future, to either get rid of certain effects or add certain effects in. It's able to pick up on all of these little nuances. This next one was a car race in the streets of a cyberpunk city. The cars aren't moving very fast, honestly. It is definitely a cyberpunk city, but it's kind of just blurry and incoherent. It's hard to see. There's definitely a main car in there, and it all seems to be in slow motion. So it's a cool generation in some ways. It's pretty appealing to look at, but it's kind of confusing and incoherent. So here is something, again, that I should point out. When we use these prompts, we're used to, right now at least, to creating prompts that are for images or single images. So we might use words like photo, or we might use words like portrait. And those words actually don't really lend themselves that well to AI video, as it turns out. So the prompt for this one was ripped from a Midjourney generation. It was Fujifilm colorful photo of a hand with AI technology integrated, cyborg AI tech, beautiful thumbnail, AI lightning detail. And you can see in the prompt, I specifically stated that it was a photo and that it was a thumbnail, so it just created a still image with barely any animation or movement at all. So if you want to actually create some prompts with movement, you gotta try to learn how to prompt a actual video generator instead of an image generator, because they work differently. This next one was pretty cool. This was psychedelic art, trippy lemon characters walking up an infinite staircase, optical illusion. Obviously, we don't really see the lemon characters, but it is a very trippy and psychedelic image with this weird optical illusion effect going on. And I think like these optical illusions and these trippy, like messy kinds of videos and creations are going to lend themselves well to these models at first, just because of how incoherent they are, and it doesn't really take a lot of realism to make this look good and interesting. So yeah, pretty cool generation. Here's another example of one of these more trippy, psychedelic looking images, and this is infinite fractal zoom. So I was trying to have like that classic fractal zoom video get generated, but it kind of just generated something that looks somewhat like a fractal maybe, and there's just like this swirling milky thing going on, but it's kind of appealing imagery to look at, honestly. It's not like it's super ugly to look at. Background, maybe, wallpaper thing. Not entirely useless generation. So this next one was pretty cool, and honestly, I think it came out really, really well. The prompt literally was slow motion, slow motion, slow motion, slow motion, and you get this slow motion looking video effect. It looks like there's smoke combined with being underwater. It's actually really, really cool to look at, and I think it came out fantastic. So this thing's ability to hallucinate new imagery is also going to be huge, because you're going to be able to create visuals that have just never been thought of before. I mean, this would be really hard for me to create in something like Blender. I would actually need to set up a physics environment and do something, but since this thing has learned of different aspects of slow motion, it can create this really cool abstract slow motion video. So these next few prompts get very, very specific. And obviously with the specifics here, Gen 2 is going to struggle because it's just not there yet as a video generation model. So this is a lemon warrior leaving his family's house at night, hugging his lemon wife and his lemon son, then entering a carriage, medieval ambiance, dark forest background, cozy cabin at the side of them. We kind of have that dark forest, medieval aspect, ambiance to the whole video, and you can see he's kind of riding on maybe some kind of a horseback here. It's really, really difficult to make out what's going on in this generation. To be honest, it's kind of a flop of a generation, but you can see the behind aspects here. You could tell that once these models get a lot better, our generations are going to start looking a lot clearer and a lot better. Like you can see it's picking up on stuff that we want. Like it's in the forest at night, the lights are beautiful, the background blur and the foreground blur is really cool looking. It's just you can see the base for something to be really good existing. It's just not there yet. So this was user submitted, but I do believe that this prompt was originally an AI image generation, because look at how still all of this is, and look at how still the sides of these are and everything. It did a pretty good job keeping it looking like an image, but it was essentially a group of ducks and geese swimming in a small pond. But yeah, it does actually describe itself as an image and photograph in the prompt and all that stuff. So what do you get? You actually get a photograph or an image. It doesn't really animate stuff unless you tell it to animate it. Otherwise, it literally tries to generate an image, and I think that's the way it should be. Because when you say you want something to be still and not to move, you want the AI to listen to you, because you might want something very, very still and specific in your video generation. This idea was pretty cool. This was simply macro shot of a time lapse of a lab diamond forming. So instead we kind of just got this slow zoom onto a diamond. It looks like a macro shot, I will say that, and it also looks a lot just like a regular image, even though it wasn't specified in it. So maybe that word shot in Gen 2 kind of just signifies imagery. So you got to be careful with Gen 2 because it likes to just generate still photos if you don't prompt it correctly. This next one was pretty awesome. I really do like this generation quite a lot. This was simply a rock band comprised of Bigfoots playing a live song to an audience of woodland creatures in a picturesque forest. We don't see the woodland creatures necessarily in this. Maybe we are the woodland creatures watching this right now, but I do love these Bigfoot creatures kind of just jamming and dancing in this video. It's a really, really cool little generation. I like the forest in the background and how still it is, and also keep in mind the way the AI is able to understand light inside of the forest and the way the light is going to bounce off of these Bigfoots. It looks pretty realistic, and I just can't wait for this tech to get better because we're going to be able to make so many awesome, cool video generations. But yeah, these Bigfoots are just having a great time. This next one reminds me of like a Barbie movie or something like that. You can see it's doing the black bars again with this generation, but this essentially is an army of all original superheroes. They are in golden chariots being pulled by two-legged fire-breathing unicorns, attempting to cross a body of non-Newtonian fluid, dynamic action poses / scenes in the art style of Roger Rabbit. I mean, there's a lot going on in this prompt. Obviously, it wasn't going to get a lot of it, but it's got some basic stuff. You can kind of see the formation of unicorns in there. You can see golden objects and something that looks fantastical and colorful and action-based, but it's kind of more or less just abstract footage at this point. The model, quite simply, is not good enough to understand all of these aspects yet and combine them together in an effective generation. You can definitely see some fluid, though, as well in this prompt. There's a lot going on here. Again, you can see like the basis for something great in Gen 2. It's just not fully there yet. This was supposed to be a man walking untouched in the middle of a battlefield. Digital art. Again, that digital art is probably throwing this thing off. Sharp, detailed drawing. Again, also throwing it off, trying to make it think that it's an image. Arrows flying through the air, which we don't see. People fighting with swords on either side. We also don't really see that. And again, it says it's trending on ArtStation, and it's a close-up face shot, so it's just thinking that this is supposed to just be an image, which is, I think, the right way that Gen 2 should be prompted. We just need to learn and get used to prompting video generations instead of just images, because we're so used to prompting images at this point. This one was really, really cool and abstract. I love the flying liquid slowly floating through the air as if it were in outer space. The prompt was traveling through a doorway into an eternal realm of 4D space, and it's kind of trying to capture that 4D space in some weird way. You can see like the vague figure of a body maybe moving through like an ethereal portal over here, and in general it's just a pleasing to look at little clip. Spacey and ethereal and 4D. It kind of grabs all those aspects, I think, pretty well. This one came out pretty decent, I think. It looks a lot like a shot from something you would see in, I don't know, Game of Thrones. This was a man walking into a giant castle. Ultra realistic details, sunshine, focus, portrait, 8K. You can definitely see the sunshine in the final generation. A huge castle. I mean, this castle is ginormous. We've got two people walking in this, but still, I mean, bonus points for actually getting someone walking towards a castle. Yeah, lots of detail. It looks like a big old castle, and it's fairly close to the prompt. Pretty good generation from Gen 2. This was a giant space cyber cat fighting a fleet of spaceships in space. Kind of just looks like something from Star Wars, maybe. Like we've got these ginormous spaceships, but we've also got these huge galaxies and stuff in the background. I mean, it's supposed to be a giant cyber cat. We definitely don't see any feline aspects of this image at all, so completely missed out on that, but yeah, there is a lot going on, and it looks like a pretty cool little space scene. I love the way that the light is reflecting in this as well. I'm sorry to do this, but I've got more nightmare fuel for you guys. This was a cat meowing in the middle of night, so it was able to pick up on the cat aspect, although this is like a cat vacuum. I don't know, like the cat got possessed and is evil now. I'm not sure what's going on, but it's not able to keep that cat consistent at all. Definitely during the night, though, at least. So, yeah, I mean, this one just came out really, really horrifying. My apologies on this. So, not sure what happened with this one, but this was Elon Musk as a dwarf storming the Black Gate of Mordor, and yeah, I mean, we've just kind of got a generic fiery castle scene. It's more of an image than anything else. We've also got this big, like, I don't even know what this is over here, but I guess this is supposed to be some sort of a logo. Yeah, this generation really fell apart. I don't see Elon Musk. I see maybe a dwarf. I'm not sure what the Black Gate of Mordor is supposed to look like. Tell me in the comments if this is accurate. I am quite uncultured, so I don't know what stuff like that is supposed to be. But yeah, I think this generation's kind of a flop. This one was really, really cool, though. This was a black hole swallowing a star inside of space. Definitely in space, definitely some sort of like a black hole in there. It's not perfectly circular. It's kind of like this weird oval black hole, but yeah, it looks like a star has been sucked up inside of it or something like that. And we can see all this light and like stardust flying around in space. Pretty cool generation, really relaxing and cool to look at. Again, Gen 2 just kind of generated a zoomed in image for this. This time, though, there's not anything I can really think of in the prompt that would point Gen 2 towards just an image. This was literally just a dog wearing a superhero outfit with red cape flying through the air, and I guess that is definitely what is pictured in this image, but maybe we need to add more like animated keywords into our prompts to make it look more like a video instead of an image. I'm not sure. I mean, Gen 2 is so new, we don't exactly know how to prompt this thing correctly yet. It's brand new tech. But overall, the generation is pretty decent. I mean, the bottom half of the dog's legs, though, what is going on there? That is terrifying. So now we're getting into the rest of my Midjourney submitted prompts. So I put the Midjourney original prompt in and the actual Midjourney generation as well. So this was artistic technological tsunami wave. Here's the Midjourney image. And here's what we actually got out of Gen 2. Not half bad. I mean, it picked up a decent amount of what was in that original Midjourney generation. You can see this is actually really, really quite good. We've got the sun over there in the corner, and we've got these waves slowly moving in like a really, really unique and interesting way, which is also how the waves are moving in the Midjourney generation. And all of the same colors from the Midjourney generation are also here. You can also see some depth of field and bokeh blur sort of surrounding this wave as well. It's really, really quite a good generation, I think, from Gen 2. So this next one here is the Midjourney generation. The prompt was AI-powered Swiss Army knife. And here is the generation, definitely a very different looking Swiss Army knife. You can see it kind of moves around a little bit as it slowly zooms in. But yeah, I guess the basic idea is still there. But this one just, it's too complex, too much going on. It can't really decide what it wants to do with the final end result. So there's just some really glitchy weirdness. Not a great result. So the next generation here was a panda wearing a spacesuit floating in the beautiful outer space, detailed, eye-catching. Here is the Midjourney generation that was submitted, and here's what we got out of it. Definitely a panda floating through outer space. I like that the panda's got the whole helmet and spacesuit in there. I love the space rocks in the background, and I like that he's slowly floating through outer space. I don't think that there needs to be that much movement for this particular scene to work well, but it looks pretty cool, I think. I like this. So this one came out quite awesome. The Midjourney image is presented here, and the prompt with the Midjourney image was 3D Octane render of transparent blobs bouncing on a couch, delirium hallucination. And the Gen 2 result, honestly, is pretty fantastic. I mean, we don't see the couch there necessarily, but we definitely got like these really cool delirium hallucination bubbles bouncing around. It's a really, really interesting little video clip to look at for sure. And there does appear to be somewhat of a couch maybe here. It's just sort of like this abstract floating through space 3D render thing, and it's just really cool. I love the colors. I like a lot about this generation. It really appeals to me. I don't necessarily know why. Also notice the bubbles in the background. They're also blurred out, but still consistent with these other bubbles and the way that they look. All right, next up, another Midjourney generation detailed photo, Shih Tzu puppy dressed as a pirate sailing on the pirate ship. And it actually captured quite a lot from this too. This video came pretty good. You could see the dog's head almost move there. And I mean, the dog's face honestly looks fairly decent. I'm not sure what's on his head, but then you can see like he doesn't have the rest of his body. We have something that somewhat resembles a part of a pirate ship, but I love the clouds in the background. And I love some of the movement. It definitely looks like there's some wind going on and like wind is blowing through the dog's hair almost. But yeah, it did a pretty good job capturing what the dog is supposed to look like. Honestly, this dog looks almost better than Dolly 2's generations with the same prompt. This one had no words. I just simply gave it this Midjourney generation image, which is phenomenal, by the way. This is a phenomenal Midjourney generation. But yeah, this is what it got out of that. It's like a cat horror thing, chrono cat inside of New York. I don't know. And also, what is going on with the trees in the background? This is terrifying. Definitely got some of the aspects of the image, at least. It's supposed to be a black and white cat. It's got like the woods in the background. I don't know. I mean, there's a long way to go with this. Without the extra prompt, it struggled to create this thing correctly. This one, again, no prompt, just an image, and this was the Midjourney image that I submitted. A pretty cool generation, I would say, and this is what we got out of it. Definitely still got that hyperdimensional woman over there, but it put this hyperdimensional woman in a time lapse of these beautiful mountains, and it honestly is a pretty cool looking generation. Look how accurate the clouds are in the reflection to the clouds actually in the sky. Pretty cool stuff. This one, I just submitted this beautiful Midjourney generation of like some detailed limes. I really love this generation. And this is what we got. We got like this slow panning zoom of all of these cut up limes. It actually resembles the Midjourney generation quite closely, I think. So, you know, depending on how close together the training datas are, you can really sort of line these images up fairly well. And this one came out good. This is a nice little zoom in of like some limes. Actually almost usable footage if it was a little bit clearer and a little bit more coherent. Here is the final image that I submitted. It's just a photograph of some waves at sunset. Pretty cool little photo. And this is the result we got. We've also got the same concept of waves at sunset, but for some reason the city is overflowing with water. I mean, this is a city after a natural disaster or something, so it definitely took some creative liberties, but fairly close to the prompt, and it was able to understand things for the most part, I think. So viewers, tell me what you think of our little Gen 2 text-to-video exploration. How far along does this technology have before it's close to something like Midjourney V5, where we have indistinguishable footage of things actually going on, and we can really recreate and create new footage? Obviously, most of the footage we looked at today is completely unusable, but we're going to have usable stuff, I think, personally, pretty soon. Maybe even by the end of the year. The footage that's generated right now is not yet HD, it's not even 720p. However, we can expect all of these different things to get better very, very soon. I mean, the pace of AI evolution is very, very rapid. And also, are you guys worried about deepfakes with stuff like Gen 2 in the future? I mean, you saw the Morgan Freeman one. It definitely looks like Morgan Freeman and knows what Morgan Freeman looks like, so it's a possibility in the future. I don't know, I would love to hear your thoughts on this stuff, and yeah, let me know if you're excited for Gen 2. Gen 2 will be releasing to the public once it's done its alpha training and everything, and will be available on the Runway website. And yeah, thank you so much for the access to Gen 2 to that RunwayML employee. It has been fantastic testing it out so far, and I'm very excited to test it out some more in the future. Thank you so much for watching, viewers. I'll see you in the next video, and goodbye.